Yaakov and his 12 sons settled in the land of Israel. Now, of his 12 sons, Yaakov had a favorite. His favorite son was one of his youngest sons. His name was Yosef. And for Yosef, he made something very special. Oh my, look at this beautiful coat. I'm sure all my brothers are going to love to see it. I can't wait to show it to them. Now, of course, when his brothers saw the coat, they were not very enthused. They were very jealous that their father loved Yosef, and they're very jealous of his colored coat. And they came up with all these plans against their brother. Not only that, but Yosef had two dreams which would foretell of his brothers bowing down to him as he would become a ruler. Now after that, the brothers had enough of his brother, and they came up with a plan to get rid of him. Stripped him of his colored coat and threw him in a pit. Instead of getting rid of him in the pit, they decided, let's make some money off this, and they sold him to some passerbys, and Yosef eventually made his way down to the land of Egypt, where he was sold to Potiphar, one of the high ministers of Pharaoh. And he worked at Potiphar's house. He was very successful. He soon became in charge of everything in Potiphar's house. But after a libel against him, he was thrown into prison. I'll get out of this place. In prison, Yosef was also very successful in that the guards really trusted him, and he ended up getting the keys and managing the whole prison. He used to walk around, see how prisoners were doing, and he bumped into two fellows, the baker and the butler of King Pharaoh, who were sitting in prison. They're very sad. And Yosef found out that they had dreams. They didn't know the interpretation of the dreams. And Yosef, who had his own dreams, now he's listening to their dreams, he was able to interpret their dreams with the help of Hashem. And his interpretation was correct. The baker was sentenced to be killed, and the butler made his way eventually back into the palace. And Yosef said, please, when you go back in the palace, tell King Pharaoh that I'm sitting here in prison wrongfully and to take me out. Unfortunately, the butler forgets about Yosef sitting in prison until one night, shall I say, Pharaoh had a dream. He had two dreams, in fact. One dream was with ears of corn, and one dream was with cows. Essentially the same idea. There were big, thick, healthy cows and thin, scrawny cows that came out of the Nile River, and the thin, scrawny cows ate the big, thick cows, but the small cows didn't get any bigger. And Pharaoh had no idea what this meant. The butler finally remembered about Yosef sitting in prison when King Pharaoh himself had these dreams, and Yosef was brought out of prison, stood before Pharaoh, and interpreted the dreams as follows. The healthy cows, 7 healthy cows, and the 7 healthy stalks of corn, ears of corn, that Pharaoh saw in his dream was a symbol of the 7 healthy years that Egypt was going to have. 7 good years of things growing and wonderful times. After those 7 years was going to be 7 years of famine, so bad that nobody would remember the 7 good years. That was symbolized by the corn and the cows eating and consuming the healthy ones and not getting any bigger. Pharaoh right away realized that this was the correct interpretation of his dream, and he said, wow, that was great. Now what do we do? And Yosef said, I have an idea. If King Pharaoh will stockpile food for 7 years, then when it comes time for famine, we'll be settled. And not only that, other countries and people from around here that are also going through this famine, they're going to come to us to get food. And Pharaoh is going to become the wealthiest man in the entire world. Pharaoh loved it so much that Yosef was promoted from prisoner to second only to King Pharaoh himself. Meanwhile, back in the land of Israel, Yosef's brothers are about to travel down to Egypt to obtain food. Now, again, there are 11 brothers back there. Yaakov did not want the youngest son to go. He didn't want anything to happen to Binyamin, the youngest brother. So he sends 10 brothers down to the land of Egypt. Yosef immediately recognizes his brothers. In fact, he was waiting for this moment for them to come. And he had a plan. And he accused them of spying on the land of Egypt. Of course, they denied that they were spies. So Yosef said, okay, if you're not spies, you leave me one brother here. You go back to the land of Israel, and you bring me your other brother. They had no choice. They went back home, left one brother, and they told Yaakov, we can only go back down to Egypt if Binyamin comes with us. And Yaakov was very hesitant. He only let him go until they had no other choice. They had no food, and Binyamin went down as well. This time, Yosef welcomes them in. He has a whole meal with them. The brothers are very confused what's going on, and he sends them back with their food. But this time, he places his special goblet in Binyamin's bag. The brothers leave. Yosef sends one of his soldiers after him, and he says, hey, one of you has stolen from my master. He checks all their bags, and lo and behold, the goblet is in Binyamin's bag, and he brings them right back to the palace, of course, before there's any confrontation or huge fight, because the brothers were not going to let Binyamin get stuck in Egypt. They promised their father to bring him back. Yosef reveals to his brothers that he is their brother Yosef. And of course, they're ashamed, they're embarrassed. This is their brother. And Yosef says, don't worry, this was Hashem's plan, that I should come to Egypt and be able to save you all from the famine. Is my father still alive? And of course, his father was alive, and the brothers went back and brought Yaakov back to the land of Egypt, and they settled in the land of Goshen.